Yeah, bro, disclaimer. What am I disclaiming? You're about to hear like 16 to 17 minutes of me, the person you're hearing right now, this voice, this human being, absolutely slander the living Christ out of this new Teezo Touchdown album. Talk about how it's trash, how it isn't good, why it isn't good. I'm going to be telling you why I don't like it, all the things that it did wrong that I wish it did, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. Just me giving my negative, slanderous review of this record. So if that sounds like entertainment to you, enjoy, grab some snacks, and listen to me just rant. I was just listening to it back, and I was like, yo, am I always this, like, am I always this much of a freaking hater when I do a negative? I was like, damn, bro. The way I'm talking about this album, you would have thought Teezo, like, diss my family. Bro, I just thought I came off a little, I don't know, bro. Because I know how it be, you know, maybe sometimes you really mess with an album or a film or a game or a book or a TV show, and then some hater comes along talking about how it's trash and why it failed and the reason it sucks. And it's like, mate, I'm just trying to exist out here and enjoy my life. Just letting you know that's what you're getting with this. It's just me being a freaking hater. So if you love Teezo Touchdown, with some of the stuff I say, you might be like, what the heck are you even talking about? What the heck is he even talking about? That might happen a few times. I don't know who you are though. Maybe either way though. I don't know, might enjoy it. I just thought you should know that. Anyway, on with the video, baby. Throughout the past 6-7 months, I have heard whispers and excited tweets regarding the concept of a debut Teezo Touchdown album. It hasn't really been that long since this guy has been in the spotlight, but it seems like this is the guy that the hip-hop community especially has touted as the next big guy who's going to shake things up, and it's been a few years since his name became frequent feature placement fodder on contemporary hip-hop records like Don Toliver's Lovesick, Tyler the Creator's Call Me If You Get Lost, most recently Travis Scott's Utopia. This guy's just been hopping around from freaking side quest to side quest for a while, and this guy has done all of it without an album or project to his name. He's just kind of been this elusive, mysterious guy who's emerged and really seems to have captured the hearts of some dedicated diehard fans. My earliest memory of seeing his name was probably on the Tyler record, where he provided a really comfortably eclectic, sharp vocal punch to the track Run It Up, showing his ability to really hone into a song's energy and amplify it, and that was pretty exciting, you know. I thought he did a good job on that track, but this kind of turned out to be a little bit of a fluke for me, though, as I subsequently heard more Teezo features, and I was just confused, underwhelmed, unsure of who he really was, and I was not really fully certain if I was on board with the hype with this guy. Most notably, Subtract's latest album, the comeback album he released this year, The Rat Road, comes to mind. I did not really enjoy that record. I did review the record. It was a negative review, but that same collaborative harmony that I just highlighted from the Tyler album just seemed starkly absent on The Rat Road. There was just no gelling whatsoever between Subtract and Teezo. Teezo's voice lacked that sharpness I liked before, and instead it sort of divulged into an uncalculated flail a lot of the time, one that felt more harsh on the ears than it did exciting, and this had me a little unsure on whether he had the chops to pull through on a debut album. And the Utopia feature on Modern Jam, that too left me a bit indifferent. That appearance clearly did show a desire for ambition. It was a very freakish feature, but it sounded dreadful to me. That was probably my least favorite feature on that whole record, which is a bit of an unpopular take. It seems like a lot of people really took to what he brought to that song, but his flamboyance served way more as a roadblock than it did an elevation of what Travis was doing, and it wasn't the best song in the world to begin with anyway. It had me wondering if Teezo's erraticism could end up working against him rather than for him. If any project in his career throughout the lifespan of Teezo Touchdown is to be proof, that proof is undoubtedly going to be How Do You Sleep at Night. I cannot think of a debut album from this year that had a worse first impression than this record. In fact, this song has an opening line awkward enough, bad enough to fully turn somebody off of listening to this entire record. Right then and there, I would not be shocked if someone heard the first lyrics on this entire thing and just thought, you know what, no, I'm not going to do it. And you know what, I could not judge. This thing was infuriating. I'm not going to lie, I was very, very let down with this debut. You know, I heard, you know, in a few interviews that this album is going to show people that he takes music very seriously. This is something he's serious about. and I was excited to hear an album that was sequenced and focused and really took me on a journey, but this album did none of those things. I think he's putting his serious attention into artistic decisions, storytelling decisions, that feel more suited to favor Teezo's ego and persona more so than the actual music experience here. The vocal mixing on this entire thing is obnoxiously crisp and loud. On every single track, you can hear Teezo's voice just smothering every other layer of music, which is not something that is unheard of. Baby Keem does that quite a bit as well, but I think Baby Keem has considerably more songwriting chops, considerably more charm and charisma than Teezo. I think these songs are very loudly and proudly using every measure of every song to really present Teezo as a flamboyant and erratic and wild character, and that only makes moments like the wee on the on the track mood swings especially hard to endure. It never comes full circle into giving me a character or identity that I can latch onto and connect with and be on board with. The entire time I feel like I'm fighting against Teezo's vocals on this record. And it only serves to make him a less likable tour guide to carry us through what is already a very disconnected series of tracks that just, they lack the wild and edgy personality that they're so desperate to have. This album sounds like corduroy Dawson. Man, I seriously could not shake off a burning similarity, a burning desire to listen to Gene Dawson instead. This is something I just could not separate. A new exciting creative talent right there that I think everyone that was pining for this Teezo album should be paying attention to. I think Gene Dawson on both Pixel Bath and Chaos Now, even on Bad Sports, Bad Sports is not great, but even on Bad Sports, I think all three of the Gene Dawson albums we have do everything that How Do You Sleep at Night wants to do, but with heaps of charm. Manically more unpredictable song structures. The DNA of those albums is incredibly creative, and at all points, musically, melodically, exciting and pleasant. Too Easy is a track off of this album that I think is the biggest offender in how horrible this thing sounds. It's a very explosive track. The first half is very angry, and it's got to be the least convincing display of heavy rage I have heard on an album since Tyler the Creator's Cherry Bomb title track. Anyone who watches my videos and my reviews consistently will probably know that I'm a sucker for satisfying layering and melodic production choices, interesting drum sounds with unique patterns. As a producer myself, I love to hear production that is ear-catching, satisfying, and the words I just kept seeing to describe what Teezo offers creatively and what he's going to bring on this debut were things like unique and interesting, but I feel like I have just heard a million songs like the ones on this album done before in a more exciting way. Songs like Familiarity feel especially familiar. The only thing that I think Teezo really brings that is really setting him apart is his vocals, but they just don't set him apart in a way that I enjoy, not in a good way. He makes these odd noises quite often, and he brings a goofiness a lot of the time that always feels forced to me. I never really buy it as funny or charming, and I feel like during the moments where he really tries to do something kind of freakish, he doesn't actually commit in the way you want him to, but in a way I'm also kind of glad he doesn't, because Modern Jam is proof that when he does, it sounds extremely annoying. At least to me. I can only speak for myself. The first half of You Thought, I think, is quite a good example. His decision to cram as many syllables as he can into each line to keep up with the kind of choppy, you would have thought, jokey bit was very annoying to me. It kind of sounds like a weak attempt at trying something different every single time, and don't get me wrong, I think pushing yourself to try new, different, original things is good, but not when it's just unignorable that the song would really benefit if it was just focused more on being a good song. And Teezo wasn't committing so hard to trying to sound strange and unique and funny when he just doesn't need to. Lyrically, Teezo seems more concerned with trying to come off funny to the teens and young adults that this album's probably going to attract the most, and rarely does he give us much insight into what moves him, what drives him, who Teezo is. I still have no freaking clue. I gotta say, this is such an erratic and hodgepodge, clusterfuck, disconnected, discombobulated experience of an album. It really lacks a footing. It has, at no point does it find its footing, does it find a journey, a story. It just feels like it's like similar to A$AP Rocky's Testing. It's just jumping from one thing to another, and it doesn't do a good job of making that its power, because the actual individual ideas they're very limp, they're very dull, they're very standard, they're not quite as daring as what other artists are doing. A$AP Rocky, I think, in that example, again, two very different records, I can't stress that enough, but A$AP Rocky is an established artist who has a very focused idea of what he wants, and those songs were, at the very least, stirring and exciting, but here, I just don't think Teezo has it yet to really make something that sounds invigorating enough to really justify this creative direction. The few features that are on this album are all a breath of fresh air. Teezo rarely offers a pleasant foreground for these songs, melodically and lyrically. His voice sounds the absolute best, I would say, on the tracks Stranger and Daddy Mama Drama, but even then, I think you're hardly likely to come away from this album with a new addition to your list of favorite modern vocalists, but I will give him credit where it's due. He sounded very nice on those two songs, and I started to see his ear for composition and harmony in a bit more of a flattering way with those two tracks. Janelle Monáe is on the album on track 2, You Thought, which I already talked about in a more negative way, but I think she plays off of Teezo really well. They have good chemistry on this song during the considerably more enjoyable second half of the track, and Fouché is also on this record on the 4th track, and she brings some genuine warmth to a pretty slick jazz rap beat, which I think Teezo completely misses the mark on. He sounded really grating to me, and it's definitely a bad sign if I'm finding your features more exciting than you on your own record. I cannot, this album is, yeah, again, I'm gonna, it's a very negative review, I'm sorry. Again, I don't take any pleasure in being a freaking hater, but the truth is I just had a lot of bad thoughts and bad times, and I would like to vent. I would like to vent it off so I can put it to bed and move on. And this album is not going to get away unscathed, especially when it has a closing track like this. It is absolutely rich that Teezo thinks he's going to get anything but freaking eye rolls. eye rolls from this closing track, which is an absolute joke of a song and one of the most painful freaking things I have sat through all year. Most of this track is a ballad with pretty charming low-key guitar chords that wouldn't sound fully out of place on a Radio Department album or something like that, so I'm not complaining there. I'm complaining at everything Teezo does on it, and everywhere Teezo decides to take this soft ballad foundation. His lines about, like, the ending was better, the original was better, who the F is the director, feel like a cheap way to deflect criticism, to end your album off showing your desperation to beat the odds, defy expectations. Feels more to me like an ego trip than the final hurrah it wants to be, and it leaves me feeling very indifferent, really, and it makes it pretty hard to feel anything meaningful during this very dull opening crescendo on this track, which builds into, by the way, a completely repulsive EDM drop. And in Teezo's final attempt to subvert expectations here and really show off his lack of musical boundaries, I think he turns himself into a laughingstock. I guess a lot of EDM does admittedly aim to reach the same kind of uplifting, blissful, emotional eureka climax moment that this closer is clearly trying to go for. So in that sense, I can kind of see what he might have been trying to do, but this song musically and lyrically is really awkwardly undercommitted to reaching for the stars. It ends up being the butt of its own joke, and it only left me looking back and just feeling miserable, only regretting the time I spent with this record. I gave this record several listens, and I really, truly, by the end, every single time felt like I had just been, like, taken the piss out of. This album really ends horribly. Neighborhood and end up also being two borderline insufferable tracks. The former has a demeanor about it that I can only define as corny or cringy, and that word isn't very constructive. I do recognize it's often a pretty easy way to just get out of criticizing something and a quick way to just dismiss a piece of art as silly or beneath you. Usually it doesn't achieve much outside of just belittling what you're talking about, but I feel like there are few songs on this record more worthy of bullying than this fucking song. Neighborhood is trying to tell, or Teezo is trying to tell, a dark story here of a homeless man dying in a dangerous neighborhood, but he's putting the story in the worst context, in a very cutesy context. The music here is playful, which is clearly trying to suggest that tragic situations like this are brushed off as casual far too often, but at no point does he actually commit to making this statement. At no point throughout the track does it ever reach like a dangerous or tense climax or anything like a scenario such as this would call for. As a result, I find it leaves little to no impact and comes off more like pandering or afraid to fully make the committed statement lurking beneath the picture it's painting. It ends up being another missed opportunity that comes off as pathetic and funny, rather than moving and stirring, and it doesn't help that the guitar plucks and the vocal layers during the chorus, when he says hood, manage to make the song sound more like a Wiggles cover than anything else. As for this track hosts the most groan-inducing group of lines on the album. I'm gonna put them on screen right now. No, I'd rather just leave it there and move on if you don't mind. The strongest track on this album, the one song I can look at and be like, hey, I think that is a good song, I like that song, would be Impossible. This song is not aiming for any of the painful highs that Teezo seems to be only capable of reaching when he actually does try his best. On this song, professionally, I don't think he is trying his best, but in a good way. I mean that very positively. It's a very lax track, and that's its strength, that's what it's going for, and he executes that very well. He takes his foot off the gas pedal a bit here, doesn't try so hard, and it results in a really charming, low-stakes, deep cut with a nice instrumental that serves as the singular good 3-minute stretch of music on this entire record. Overall, Teezo Touchdown has made an awful debut, an absolutely awful debut here. He's very, very far from making a good record, if this is anything to go by, in my opinion. It seems like a lot of people were very excited about Teezo being a fresh new face, as was I. I was definitely curious. His feature on the Tyler record I'd like, so I didn't have a reason to fully go in expecting trash, you know? So, yeah, but I mean, I don't think this is going to shake things up much. I find it very unlikely that this record is going to have much of any shelf life at all. Teezo has marketed this record as a new genre entirely, calling it rock and boom, I've seen. And this, sadly, is very overly assertive of Teezo to say, because this album did not at all rock, nor did it freaking boom. It's above all else extremely boring and uncomfortable to sit through, and I think if anyone out there is making whatever Teezo defines as rock and boom, it is not him. It's Gene Dawson, it's Binky, it's Genesis Owusu, it's Paris Texas, it's Kenny Mason, it's Eve Toomer, and many other considerably better contemporaries. My time with this album was truly very negative, unfortunately, and I really don't believe Teezo is doing anything here that is not available somewhere else in a much more polished and exciting capacity. So for that reason, I really, really cannot recommend giving this record your time. You know, there have definitely been some negative reviews that I've given, such as the group Therapy review. I did not care for that record, but I could see its merits, and I did still say in that video, you know, it's worth a try. I could see someone hearing it and being really, really moved and taken back by it. I just wasn't the audience for it. This is an album that I look at and I think, yeah, I would not suggest hearing it. I wouldn't even suggest trying it. I don't think it's worth trying. That's truly how I feel, which is a shame to say. You know, I think Teezo definitely has a lot of ideas. I don't think he has the honed craftsmanship to execute them in a way that is enjoyable. These songs are bad. His writing is bad. His vocals are bad. I'm giving this... It's between a 2 or a 3. It's between a 2 or a 3. I'll go with 3. Because I guess at the end of the day, this album, it did try. I just think it tried in all the wrong ways. It wasn't insulting. It was just really egregious to sit through. I'll go with 3 out of 10. But yeah, that's just me. Let me know how you felt about it in the comments if you think if I'm smoking the good stuff.